Hey, Viola Rules here, and welcome back to Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Justice for All. So we're still doing the cross-examination of Acro about his physical state, but I was just thinking, I don't think he meant to kill the ringmaster, because his note was addressed to Regina. She was supposed to read it, follow the instructions on it, and then he was going to drop the bust on her. But he killed the ringmaster because, like they said, there's no way for him to be able to look out of his window to see who he's hitting with the bust. He just heard them walk below his window. So once he heard the crunching of the snow, he figured his target was in range, threw the bust out the window, or pushed it out the window, and then it fell and hit the ringmaster by accident. It was meant for Regina because he wanted to get back at her for what she did to Bat, though it's a bit extreme because it's like Bat's in a coma. He's not exactly dead. He's just comatose. But anyway, let's talk to Acro about his physical state. Have you ever lifted up the bust before? No, I've never actually lifted it with my own two hands. But I should get to it, don't you think? I can't let money outdo me on this. Oh, Money is able to hold it, though. Money? The crazy monkey has lifted Max's bust before? Well, stop playing with your birds and respond. Please continue with your testimony, Mr. Dingling. I have a strong upper body from working as an acrobat. So, what have you been doing to keep in shape? Well, honestly, I've given up on training. I don't have any plans to return to the trapeze or the tightrope. You don't say. But no offense, I'm not worried about losing to you in a race or anything. Neither am I, Mr. Phoenix Wright. I wouldn't lose either, Slowpoke. I mean, Nick. Whoa. How did the discussion turn to me all of a sudden? Because it always does. I suppose you could say that I'm stronger than the average bear. However, lifting the bust and looking out the window would have been impossible. And why is that? Because if I were to do that, I'd end up falling out the window myself. I still haven't gotten much feeling back in my legs yet. So you couldn't have thrown that bust out of the window. There's no way I could have exerted that kind of force on my lower body. How long do you think your recovery will take? You have to remember that the nerves were severed. I'm currently undergoing some extremely intensive rehabilitation, but it's still going to take a while before I'm back to 100%. From severed nerves? Like, once your nerves are severed, isn't that sort of the end? I guess they could surgically put them back together, but still. Let me remind you of another very important point. If the witness was carrying the bust, he would not be able to see out below the window. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That makes it impossible for me to have known the location of the ringmaster's head. Why do you say it would be impossible? Allow me to explain. You accept that if I was carrying the bust, I couldn't see out below the window? Thus, there is no way that I would know the location of the ringmaster's head. Well, I suppose you've got a point. Hey, Nick. Huh? What if you turn things around? Maybe if you think of it sort of like this. If he knew the location of the ringmaster's head, then he could drop the bust. That does make sense. If only I could prove somehow that Acro knew the location of the ringmaster's head without looking down. Yeah, that is a good point. I think I've already explained things sufficiently. Thus, it'd be unrealistic for me to drop the bust on him, don't you think? No, I don't think that at all, actually. I think I'm supposed to present the crime photo to this one because it feels like... Because whoever dropped it got a perfect shot, so obviously he did know the location of the ringmaster's head. I guess, I don't know. Just, that's the statement that stood out to me, and that's the only piece of relevant evidence that I could see that connected to it. Acro. You didn't really need to lean out of the window, did you? What are you driving at, Mr. Wright? You already knew ahead of time where the Ringmaster's head was going to be. Quite precisely, I may add. Wait. Your silly hinting at things is pointless, Mr. Phoenix Wright. Enough stalling! How about you show us some evidence? But I did such a good job at hinting. Yes. Hurry up and explain things, Mr. Wright. Maybe you should take a look at this. The key point here is the wooden box. The same wooden box that the victim was found hunched over? The same. The question is, who placed the wooden box here? Oh, I see. The wooden box was placed as a lure. Who? When Ben and company saw the Ringmaster, they didn't see him holding the box. Which means that this wooden box was already placed at the scene of the crime. Apparently they're missing words. At the crime scene is probably what that means to say. You have to admit that your theory makes a lot of sense. The moment that the bust came falling down is exactly the same moment that the Ringmaster lifted up this wooden box. Which means that the answer to all these questions is now crystal clear. You mean... If the bust were to fall upon the point marked out by the wooden box, there'd be no way that it could miss the head of the victim. Oh, because he was bent over picking it up, and when he heard the box shift, he dropped the bust and hit him on the back of the head. Okay, that makes a lot of sense now, actually. Really? For some reason I expected that the Ringmaster was standing straight up and got hit, but actually that makes a lot more sense now that he was hunched over, about to pick up the box, and then got hit. Order! This is unbelievable! Finally, some of these loose ends are starting to tie themselves up. Now I just gotta keep going. There's only one way to go from here, forward. So, the next question I have is, who placed that wooden box at the scene? It was Mr. Dingling, of course. He connected it to a rope, and then all he had to do was lower it down. Allow me to whip some sense into you. Please stop. The Ringmaster's head could have been anywhere when he lifted the box. That's why the box was so specially made. This was specially made? Indeed. It had the most peculiar feature. The size of the box, the weight of the box, the contents of the box. I'm guessing we mean... Are we talking about the contents, or... I'm guessing the weight, because the police said that it was extremely heavy, yet it only had the salt shaker in it, or pepper shaker in it. The box has a remarkable weight. Weight? According to the court record, it weighs 20 pounds. Just to lift up this wooden box would have required... Oh, I see! One would have to squat down, and then lift it up with their entire body, wouldn't you say? That's exactly what I was trying to point out. The box is also very large. The box also has carrying handles on either side, doesn't it? That is correct. To lift up the box, you'd have to squat down. Which means that no matter who you are, your head would be in approximately the same place. Fool! Still unfazed, huh? Okay. What does it take to get you to crack under pressure? Does she even bother to listen to me anymore? I've heard what you've had to say. And? I must admit, I'm shocked at your imaginative skills. Did you drop it? Did you drop the bust onto the Ringmaster? What are you talking about? Even if I wanted to do such a thing, I couldn't. What do you mean? What? Mr. Wright, do you recall the original location of this bust? Yeah, I guess the cafeteria, right? Of course I remember. It was on top of the table in the cafeteria. Then what happened to it? I'd like you to remember one important fact, Mr. Wright. I could not possibly leave the lodging house by myself. Ah, that means... You understand what I mean, don't you? I may very well have been able to drop the bus from my room. However, how would I have gotten the bus from the cafeteria to my room? You mentioned that monkey could lift it. Or monkey, whatever. Your monkey partner can lift it. You see, Mr. Phoenix Wright, explain that. Don't forget, you said there was no accomplice. Well, there was, sort of. Tell us exactly how the witness would have carried the bus from the cafeteria. Yep, we definitely have a problem here. But this is no place to get perplexed. I'm about to get my wits about me and prove how things happen once and for all. Alright, Mr. Wright, let's hear your explanation. How did the witness get the bus from the cafeteria back to his room? He used his monkey partner. A monkey? Everyone knows Money. He loves shiny objects of any size. For instance, he stole the ventriloquist's ring. So, are you saying the witness had a monkey steal the bust? Of course he didn't order the monkey to steal it. The monkey stole it on his own, and then brought it back home. Oh, we got a reaction. Home. Money lives in Acro's room. Acro's room? But the bust was bronze, wasn't it? Bronze isn't all that shiny. Maybe you should put the whip down sometimes and read the court record. My, those are some very nice cards he's holding. Oh, the cards shine. Yes, and they are made of platinum, which is very shiny. I actually didn't read the court record to see that. That's clever. Acro. Money is a strong monkey, right? It'd be easy for him to bring the bust back to your room. If he wasn't able to handle that himself, I'd be on the market for a new roommate. Order! Order! I said order! Miss Von Karma! Where's the bust in question at this moment? I don't know. We're searching for it as we speak. This is a strange turn of events. If that monkey did not steal the bust, then what happens to this case? Well, in that event, something else must have been used as the murder weapon. Well, Or maybe this bust was the murder weapon, but it was used by accident? That's possible. Maybe Acro saw Money's mountain of stolen goods and thought to use one of them. Oh, maybe Acro saw Money's mountain of stolen goods and thought to use one of them. I keep doing the wrong voices, I'm so sorry. Anyways, I think we've more than proven one critical fact. Namely, that it was entirely possible that Acro was the murderer. Moron! Mr. Wright's argument was so circular I'm still a bit dizzy, but, however, his argument does hold water. There's no denying that. Don't seem so flamboozled, especially by this fraud of an attorney. Fraud? You've forgotten the absolute most important thing, Mr. Phoenix Wright. And what is that? You should know! Stop whooping me, please. You forgot that your fraud of a magical client was spotted at the scene of the crime! There's no reason to doubt the clown's testimony. That's true. How do you respond to that, Mr. Wright? Nick, don't let her beat you now. I won't. This is my chance to turn this trial around. When the murder occurred, there were two people at the scene of the crime. One was the victim, Russell Berry, and the other was the murderer himself. Answer this, and only this, Mr. Phoenix Wright. The clown saw the murderer. Who was it then? Clown saw the murderer? Who was it? He saw the bust, right? He saw Max's bust. I asked who was the other person Mo saw on the scene, and I'm trying to give you an answer. That evidence has nothing to do with the question. Yes, it does. En contraire, mon frère, it does indeed have something to do with the question. Mo said that he saw Max's silhouette. But he did not actually see the man himself. It wasn't a human being he saw. How is that possible? It's simple, really. What Mo actually saw that night was Max's bust. What are you talking about? Have you tried using your brain at all in this case? The silhouette he saw just happened to be wearing a cloak. There's no reason why you couldn't attach a cloak to the bust. Or a cloak like that could easily get snagged on the bust if they came into contact. Idiot! Who in their right mind would put a cloak on a bust? It doesn't matter who put it on the bust. Just wait a minute now, Mr. Wright. Who put the cloak on the bust? That question is of the utmost importance to this case, don't you agree? Duh, he caught me. So let's have it, Mr. Wright. Who put the cloak on the bust? I'm going to guess... It was the victim, right? Because we established before that the ringmaster was dressed in Max's costume for some odd reason. Fool! Him? You are saying it was the victim himself, Russell Berry? That's what I am saying. The victim himself placed the cloak on the bust? Placed the cloak isn't really the right way of putting it. Then what would be the right way of putting it, Mr. Wright? Explain yourself! Nick, do you really have a handle on all of this? I'm fine, Maya. I'm finally putting all the pieces together. There's really only one picture I can paint anyways. Alright, so you want to know what really happened that night. Let's step back in time. Acro used a rope to lower the wooden box onto the scene. Then he attached that rope to the bust, and dangled the bust out of the bedroom window directly above the wooden box. At the same time, the ringmaster told Max to wait in his room and went to the scene. Of course, at the time, the ringmaster was wearing Max's costume, for some reason. Perhaps he didn't want anyone to recognize him that night. But just as he feared, he was spotted at the entrance of the lodging house by none other than a ventriloquist and his puppet, Ben and Trillo. When the ringmaster arrived at the scene, he bent over to lift the wooden box. And that's when Acro took his chance and released the rope. Now, this is when the magic happens. At the very instant that the bust hit the victim. Wow. Oh, that's why they couldn't see the face of the bust. You wait just a second there, Mr. Wright. As much as you try, as much as you scheme, this just isn't true. It can't be. It's still a little early to be getting so upset, Miss Von Karma. This circus isn't over yet. With the shock of the impact, it threw up the cloak, and it got snagged onto the bust. That's when the sound was heard by a witness, and he took a look out of his window. That witness was, of course, Lawrence Mo Curls, the clown. Which, of course, is, yes, a reference to the Three Stooges, Larry, Moe, and Curly, in case I didn't say that earlier. When Moe looked out his window, the cloak had already snagged onto the bust. Now, having completed the crime, Acro naturally went about pulling up the murder weapon. Of course, he had no idea that Moe saw the bust being raised with the cloak dangling on it. Primarily because in his wheelchair, he couldn't see out of his window. So he just kept pulling the bust up. Wow. And that is how the magical murderer disappearing into the sky came to be. Well, now you know how the murder actually took place. And now you know who was able to drop the murder weapon from above the scene. Acro, it could only have been you. Still unfazed, huh? Jeez. Acro's been playing mind games with all of us. He sure has. But he has come to the end of his rope now. So, what now? You've graced us with a rather long-winded tale. But do you have any evidence to prove that your fairy tale is true? Evidence? In this court, only two things matter, the power of evidence and the power of my whip. Don't forget the power of my gavel as well. Mr. Wright, the prosecution brings up a good point. Can we see some evidence? Nick, they say they want evidence. I just explained how there can only be one possible murder method. But there is still something unusual about Mo's eyewitness account. Unusual? A contradiction, actually. Okay then, use that and get out of this jam. That's enough talking amongst yourselves. Proceed, Mr. Wright. Present some evidence to the court that backs your claims. I want hard proof that you have unraveled the trick to this magic case. I'm actually going to go ahead and end this episode here because this episode's starting to get a little bit long. But if you guys enjoyed this one, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.